What happens when a woman tries to portray a veteran as a threat to the neighborhood and sends fake cops? She had no idea who would open the door for them. What happened next left everyone speechless. I wasn't trying to start a war. I was planting roses. That's the funny part. Ain't it always like that? You try to do something kind, something simple and decent, and the devil shows up wearing lipstick and a clipboard. I'd been living in Twin Ridge for 6 weeks. That's not a long time, but long enough to realize I'd moved into a place where smiles were fake and rules were real. You know the kind, gated community, vinyl fences, grass cut to military precision. All neat on the outside, but folks inside whisper behind glass and pretend they're guarding Eden. I came here for peace. After 22 years in uniform, 6 tours, 3 surgeries, 2 presidential commendations, and 1 collapsed marriage, I wanted nothing more than quiet mornings, good soil, and a front porch that didn't face a damn war zone. Just me, my mutt, Jasper, and a little patch of ground I could call mine. I thought that was enough. The trouble started when I helped Miss Alberta Clark. Alberta's 84. Walks like her bones, made a deal with gravity and lost. But that woman's mind? Sharp as barbed wire. She taught 2nd grade for 41 years, raised half this town before they got money and started pretending they didn't know her. She lives 2 doors down, alone ever since her husband passed. Her yard was dry, overgrown, just plain sad. So I offered to help. Nothing fancy. Just plant a few rose bushes by her walkway, fix the gate hinge, paint the porch rail. You'd think I was handing out candy to kids or something. Well, turns out kindness is a crime in Twin Ridge. Because just as I was laying mulch, sweaty and smiling like a fool, she showed up. Karen. She strutted across the street like she owned the whole zip code. Platinum bob, massive sunglasses, pressed khakis too white to trust. She had that look, the one that said, "I'm not racist," but she didn't even greet me. She looked at Alberta's flowers, then down at her little HOA handbook like it was the Holy Bible. "Excuse me," she said, flipping through laminated pages like a lawyer at a church bake sale. "Are you authorized to be doing that?" I blinked. "Ma'am, I'm helping my neighbor." She pointed at the flowers like they were contraband. "We have landscaping codes. Those weren't approved. And you're not registered as a certified service provider for HOA work. That's a $175 violation." "Come again?" She sniffed. "And you're violating Article 4B, personal labor on community-adjacent property." I looked at Alberta. She looked at me. That's when I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was stupid. Deep-fried, overpriced stadium hot dog stupid. "You gonna fine me for planting roses for an 84-year-old widow?" I asked. Karen crossed her arms. "It's about order, sir. People like you think the rules don't apply." I didn't even let her finish. "People like me?" I asked. She backpedaled. "I mean, new residents. You're new, right?" That night, I got an email from the HOA. Violation notice. Citation for unauthorized modification of visual property. Accompanied by a blurry photo of me holding a trowel like I was public enemy number 1. The next morning, my trash bins were tagged. Non-compliant placement. They'd been out 6 minutes early. And then came the kicker. 3 days later, I woke up to knocking. Not polite knocking. Fist on wood, we don't need a warrant knocking. I opened the door in sweatpants. 2 men stood on my porch. One tall and smug, the other shorter with aviator shades like he was in a B-movie cop drama. Both wore bright blue polos that read HOA Enforcement Unit. Not police. Not sheriff. HOA Enforcement. "I'm Agent Ford," the tall one said. "This is Agent Dean. We're here about an ongoing property compliance issue." "Agent?" I raised an eyebrow. Since when did HOA give out badges? He pulled a laminated card from his shirt pocket. Looked like he printed it at Kinko's. "We received multiple complaints from the board," he said. "Your behavior has been flagged as aggressive and confrontational." I folded my arms. "For gardening." "For hostile landscaping and unauthorized interaction with the elderly," Dean added. Alberta, who was standing behind her curtain across the street, waved. I waved back. "Yeah, she looks terrified, doesn't she?" "Sir, you need to come with us for a citation interview." "An interview?" I said. "Who do you think you're talking to?" Karen, of course, was standing across the lawn, filming with her phone. Probably already halfway through typing up another HOA report. Subject continues to resist peaceful neighborhood initiatives. I leaned forward. "You two are on my property. You have no legal authority. No badge, no warrant, no title, no jurisdiction. That means you're trespassing. Which means I can ask you to leave. Or call someone who'll make you." Ford chuckled. "You people think you know the law. That did it." I stepped forward slowly. Close enough for him to see the scar over my right eye. Close enough for him to see the way I didn't flinch. Boy, I said, I've lived in real law. Ate sand for dinner and buried friends who wore real badges. So unless you got something with a judge's signature and an official seal, you can turn your little cosplay act right around. His smirk dropped. Karen stopped recording. They left 5 minutes later. But I knew this wasn't over. Later that night, I found my mailbox ripped off its post. Spray paint on my fence, rule breaker. Jasper barked until 2 a.m. Someone was out there, watching. I didn't sleep. I just sat at the kitchen table. Quiet. Angry. Staring at the box I kept under my sink. The one with my service uniform folded inside. The one I hadn't touched since I moved in. Because some uniforms don't come off. Not really. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how far this went. Stay for part 2. You ever felt your peace get mugged in broad daylight? I moved to Twin Ridge for peace, and that's exactly what they couldn't stand. Because folks like Karen don't hate noise. They hate the sound of someone minding their own business with dignity. The morning after the fake enforcers paid me a visit, I took a slow walk around my house. Mailbox gone. Roses trampled. Jasper's water bowl filled with bleach. That last one nearly broke me. Jasper survived thanks to my quick reaction and the vet 2 towns over. But as I sat in that waiting room holding his paw like a father holds his child's hand in a storm, I realized something. This wasn't about roses. Or trash cans. Or rulebooks laminated by people with too much time and too little sense. This was about removing someone who didn't fit their image. And I was done pretending I didn't see it. I didn't file a police report that day. Not because I didn't want to, because I'd seen how these things went. I knew the dance. So instead, I drove home. And when I got there, a folded HOA notice was duct taped to my front door. Final warning, pending HOA board review. Violation, unneighborly conduct, yard disorder, and failure to submit to inspection. I don't know what part of planting flowers counted as disorder, but I guess beauty's against policy if the wrong hands hold the shovel. I walked inside, sat at my kitchen table, pulled out the HOA bylaws I'd printed weeks earlier. There it was, Article 3.4, refusal to comply with a board-authorized compliance request may result in board-directed enforcement action. Board-directed enforcement. That's cute. I took a breath. Then I made 2 phone calls. One to the county assessor's office. Another to the neighborhood's municipal liaison. Just a little research. Nothing dramatic. Yet, that afternoon, the neighborhood newsletter hit every porch like clockwork. Glossy paper. Full color print. Big headline on page 1. Community integrity at risk. Resident refuses to follow HOA protocols. Guess whose picture they used? Right there. Me in a hoodie holding a shovel. Jasper blurred out next to me like he was some kind of accomplice. The piece was written by none other than Karen L., HOA chair and newsletter editor. Let me read you this gem. While we support diversity and welcome new residents, community rules ensure safety and aesthetic unity. Rogue behavior erodes trust. We must act decisively. Oh, they support diversity, right? I knocked on Alberta's door that evening. She opened it slowly, her eyes red like she'd been crying. Karen came by today, she whispered. Told me I'd be fined if I allowed unlicensed landscaping assistants again. Said I was enabling violations. She threatened you? I asked. Alberta nodded. She said she'd file an elder endangerment concern. That woman was out of her mind. But the worst part? Alberta looked ashamed, like she'd done something wrong by letting someone help her. That's what anger does in this world, it makes the innocent question themselves. That night, I walked Jasper down the block. 3 people closed their blinds when I passed. One man across the street locked his car while glaring at me like I was about to jump the hood and drive off. I didn't say a word, but I knew the walls were closing in. The next morning, it escalated. I was sipping coffee on the porch when I heard the rumble of tires. A black van rolled up with no markings. 2 men stepped out. The same ones from before, fake agents Ford and Dean. Except this time, they weren't in polos. They were in dark jackets labeled HOA Enforcement Security Division. Still fake. Still not the law. But now they had clipboards, walkie-talkies, and little plastic earpieces like they were guarding the president. Karen stood behind them, arms folded, smiling like she just won bingo. Ford stepped forward. Mr. Rhodes, this is your final compliance call. We've documented multiple violations. The board has authorized a property inspection. You got a warrant? This isn't the police. HOA law allows enforcement of its own codes. I stood up. Then HOA law better bring a real sheriff or you're not setting foot past my fence. Dean pulled out a paper. Karen chirped behind him. It's a private order, Jason. Not a warrant, but we can request immediate action under emergency protocol. I stepped down the stairs slowly. Calm. Silent. Then I unlocked my front gate and let it swing open. Tell you what, I said. Go ahead. Step on in. But you'd better pray you're right. Because if you're not. I let the silence hang. Ford smirked. You think intimidation works? No, I said. But facts do. And then something happened. A voice shouted from the corner of the street. I turned. A delivery driver had pulled out a phone and started filming. Yo, what is this? You guys got cops now for gardening. Ford glanced at Dean. Karen hissed, ignore him. But it was too late. The attention had started. People began stepping onto their porches. Phones came out. Murmurs traveled. Because here's the thing about injustice, it hides well until someone turns the lights on. Ford and Dean stood awkwardly. I saw their confidence cracking. The walkie-talkies didn't work. Their jackets were cheap knockoffs. Their clipboard held nothing but blank violation slips. And just then Alberta stepped out with a walker. I've had enough of this, she said. Her voice shook, but it was firm. I asked Jason to help me. I've lived here longer than that woman's had a job. And if y'all are gonna bully veterans and old women, maybe this neighborhood ain't worth saving. Boom. Karen's smile dropped like a bad souffle. The crowd grew. Someone from HOA's finance committee was now whispering into their phone. Another woman across the street crossed her arms and said, we never voted on this security division. Karen started backpedaling. I'm just trying to maintain order. I held up a hand. No, Karen. You're trying to control what you don't understand. But here's the thing. I've been through fire. I've buried men braver than you'll ever know. And I came here thinking I was done fighting. I took a step forward. But peace doesn't mean silence. And if you think I'm scared of laminated bylaws and polyester uniforms. Karen turned and walked off mid-sentence. Her fake cops followed. Ford muttered something about getting the board involved. But the spell was broken. The crowd didn't cheer. This wasn't a movie. They just watched. Some in silence. Some in shame. A few in quiet solidarity. And as I walked back to my porch, I knew one thing for sure. They weren't done. Not even close. This is the turning point. What comes next will flip everything upside down. You're right at the edge. Don't miss what happens in part 3. Let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. Over years, continents, and more sand in my boots than I care to remember, the line between peace and pressure, it's as thin as a mosquito's eyelash. And when the wrong person keeps poking that line, thinking they can't be touched, eventually something snaps. Karen didn't back down after that little performance in front of the neighbors. No, ma'am. That would have required humility. And you can't Google how to spell that when your ego's louder than your common sense. The very next day, I got an envelope on my doorstep, sealed in red. Notice of emergency hearing, HOA Code 11.3 violation. Resident exhibiting threatening behavior. No signature. No return address. Just bold letters trying to sound like law. I read it twice, then once more just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Threatening behavior? For what? Breathing while planting flowers. I called the HOA office. Voicemail. Of course. I emailed the contact listed. Bounced back. They'd gone dark. Classic. Now, I've been through some mess in my life, but this was a new flavor of absurd. HOA summoning me to a hearing for standing on my own porch while not letting fake cops play pretend on my lawn? What's next? A drone strike for overwatering the azaleas. Now here's where the story turns. I decided I wasn't just going to show up to this little kangaroo court. I was going to walk in not like a man accused, but like the one who brought receipts. Because what Karen didn't know, or maybe forgot, is that I keep everything. Every letter, every photo, every phone call, every time her fake agents stepped foot on my land. I logged it. Every harassment attempt, timestamped. Every HOA rule she broke while trying to enforce the ones she made up, documented. I even had video from my own home security cameras. She thought cutting the wires ended that? Nah. Battery backup. Wi-Fi sync. Uploaded to cloud. You know what they say, tech doesn't forget. So when the day of the hearing came, I put on something special. Not to intimidate, not to boast, but because I was tired of pretending I was just another dude in a hoodie. I put on my old uniform, not the dress blues, Not the polished boots or medals. Just the same worn shirt I wore the day we airlifted a family out of a burning village halfway across the world. The one that still smelled like duty, dust, and heat. I walked into that community center on Sycamore Street like I had every right to be there, because I did. And you should have seen the room. A folding table. 5 board members, Karen, of course, right in the center like she was running Congress. A few of her loyalists flanking her, looking proud of themselves. And one empty chair facing them. That was for me. Karen straightened up when she saw me. The smirk dropped. The room got quiet. "I see you came prepared," she said, clearing her throat. "I always am," I said, setting down a folder 2 inches thick. "We've called this hearing to address your conduct," she started. "Which has been." "Let me stop you there." I pulled out my stack. "Before we get into conduct, let's talk protocol." One by one, I laid down documents, copies of their bylaws, evidence that the so-called HOA patrol isn't listed as a registered or legal enforcement body. A letter from the county stating that no HOA has the authority to issue citations under Emergency Code 11.3. A statement from my neighbor Alberta, written in her own hand, saying I'd never once threatened her or anyone else. Karen blinked. One of the board members, an older man in a navy blazer who looked like he'd rather be playing golf, leaned forward. "Where did you get all this?" "Where I get everything," I said. "From paying attention." I looked directly at Karen. "And while we're on the topic of behavior, let's review some other things." I pressed play on a tablet. Footage played. Clear. HD, audio crisp. Karen standing outside my gate telling the fake enforcers to go around back. One of them saying, "Should we wait for backup?" Her laughing and saying, "He's just another ex-military hothead. What's he gonna do, salute us?" Dead silence. I paused the video. Looked around the room. No one spoke. "You created a hostile environment," I said slowly. "You orchestrated unauthorized entry onto private property. You threatened an elderly woman with citations that don't exist. And now you're accusing me, a decorated veteran, of being a threat because I didn't bow to your nonsense." Karen's voice cracked. "This isn't about you being a veteran." "No," I said. "It's about you thinking you can push people around and hide behind a rulebook you don't even follow yourself." I pulled out the last folder. "By the way, here's the invoice for damage to my mailbox, roses, and fence. You can split it however you like. You've got 5 business days." The board voted to close the meeting within 15 minutes. No apology. No resolution. But the tide? It shifted. I walked out of that room and felt every step echo. Not with pride, but with weight. And outside the center, a few residents were waiting. Alberta. The woman from down the block. Even the delivery guy who'd filmed everything earlier. They didn't say much. Just nodded. Solidarity doesn't always need words. That evening, my porch light stayed on. So did my cameras. No vandalism that night. No knocks. No strange cars circling the block. But I knew better than to let my guard down. Karen wasn't finished. When folks like her get embarrassed, they don't retreat. They regroup. This was the moment everything cracked, but the fallout? That's still coming. If you think this was intense, you haven't seen what happens when the mask finally slips in part 4. You ever see a house of cards collapse in slow motion? You blink and suddenly all those smug little rules and whispered meetings and fake authority fall to the floor, piece by piece, real quiet, like even the wind knows it's time to hush. That's what it felt like the morning it all came to light. But don't get me wrong, the fall didn't happen in one dramatic explosion. No, this wasn't no Hollywood takedown with a trumpet soundtrack. This was real life. And in real life, truth takes its time. It started with a knock. Not the kind Karen sent, no enforcers, no clipboards, no laminated fiction. This was a clean knock. Respectful. 2 taps. Steady. I opened the door. A woman stood there. Black slacks, beige blouse, sharp eyes behind square lenses. She introduced herself. "Mr. Rhodes? I'm Investigator Talia Green from the County Integrity Board." I said nothing for a second. Just blinked. Took it in. She smiled politely. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. Talia wasn't what I expected. She was calm. Clear. Precise. Not interested in drama. Just facts. She sat at my kitchen table with a stack of folders and said, plain as day, "We've received multiple complaints about HOA misconduct in Twin Ridge. Your name keeps coming up not as a problem but as someone with documentation." I handed her my file. All of it. No edits. No highlights. Just the raw truth. She spent over an hour reviewing it. Asked questions. Took notes. Didn't blink when I showed her the footage of Karen's fake cops. Didn't flinch when I played the audio of the so-called hearing. When she left, she said this. You'll hear from us soon. But I promise you're not the one under review. Now, you'd think I'd exhale after that. Relax. Stretch my legs, throw on some jazz, sit on the porch like the fight was over. But that ain't how it works when the system's still lopsided. Because a few days later, Karen showed up again. Only this time, she wasn't alone. I was trimming the hedges real quiet, real peaceful when I heard the voice. Mr. Rhodes. I looked up. Karen was standing at the end of my driveway, shoulders tight, face pale, arms clutched like she was bracing for winter. And behind her? Talia. With 2 more county officials and a uniformed officer, real badge this time. Karen stepped forward. But it wasn't with her usual confidence. It wasn't that high horse swagger, the clipboard queen attitude. No, this was different. I'd like to speak with you, she said. I didn't move. One of the officials gestured. Mr. Rhodes, we're here to formally address the complaint you filed and the actions taken by your HOA. Talia added, Ms. Lawrence has been asked to return property documents, digital files, and communication logs regarding her role as HOA chair. I stayed quiet, because sometimes silence says more than words. Karen's hands trembled. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. I thought I was protecting the community. That's when I spoke. No, I said. You were protecting control. You just didn't expect someone would say no. The next week? Phew. It was like watching a curtain finally drop. An emergency board meeting was held. Not in secret this time. Open to the community. People showed up, dozens of them. Alberta came with her walker. So did the couple from across the street. Even the delivery guy who filmed the HOA patrol mess showed up in a church suit. And me? I didn't speak. I just watched. Because sometimes justice don't need your voice. Sometimes it just needs your receipts. Karen tried to justify her actions. Claimed she was overwhelmed. Claimed the HOA lacked support and she was filling gaps. The board wasn't having it. They reviewed everything. The fake patrol, the unauthorized citations, the harassment, the use of HOA funds for personal flyers, private surveillance, and that ridiculous security van rental. It was all there, in plain sight. The final vote? Unanimous. Karen Lawrence was removed from her position permanently. Her HOA membership was suspended pending further investigation by the county. And that wasn't the end. Because a week after that, I received a letter. An official apology from the Twin Ridge Homeowners Association. Included was a reimbursement check for all damages. And a request. Would I consider joining the board? I stood on my porch that night, watching the sunset pour gold over the street like it was erasing every drop of petty nonsense that had soaked this place for months. Jasper sat beside me, tail wagging slow. The porch was quiet. For once, no knocks. No citations. Just the sound of peace, real peace earned, not granted. I thought about the offer. To join the very board that once let Karen run wild. And part of me laughed. Because they weren't asking out of guilt. They were asking because they'd finally seen what leadership really looked like. Not someone hungry for control, but someone willing to stand not just for himself, but for people who were tired of being pushed around. I didn't take the seat right away. I asked Alberta first. She said, Jason, I've lived here longer than anyone. And I've never felt safer than the day you told Karen no. See, sometimes the uniform isn't the point. It ain't about the shirt, the patch, the badge. It's about how you wear your dignity. How you protect people even when they don't clap for it. And me? I didn't come here to fight. But I wasn't about to let someone steal my peace and call it policy. Not then. Not ever again. The end.